It's time for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now.
It appears that you want to go to prison and be passed around for cigarettes or dessert, because that's what's going to happen to you. Because you're young and they will think you're attractive at the prison. And I'm just being real with you. You understand? And no matter commissary money that your parents and your grandparents can put on the books for you is going to save you from being passed around at the prison. You understand? And do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you want to be passed around for Ramen noodle? Because that's what's going to happen. No, I'm dead serious. And that's what happened at the Bexar County Jail. People will get passed around for dessert. Someone was sentenced to this in this court for murder. And the first thing he did at the Bexar County Jail was go have sex with somebody. Whether it was consensual or not, that case hasn't been brought to me. And I can tell you right now, your grandparents, your mother probably doesn't have enough money to put on your books so you won't be passed around for Ramen noodles, cigarettes, oranges, or whatever at the jail. And it appears to the court that that's what you want to happen to you. Doing all these little crazy little tattoos you got here, trying to be Billy Bad with gang tattoos and everything. Do you understand? All right, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to think about this. You can come back in the afternoon.
In this round, here's Quan LX.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. That's all I really can say about the comments that judge made to that young man who was in custody in her courtroom. I wish that more judges would speak the raw, unadulterated truth about incarcerated prison jail life to these young men, because they seem to believe what's happening behind bars will not happen to them, and it's not real. What she spoke was the facts. When I was 17, Charles, I got locked up at 17. And I did 18 days in jail at 17 in high school. What I witnessed was a complete shock of so many young suburban young boys, white boys and Arab boys in particular, two Asians, who had no right, really no business to be in jail with the type of young men that we were behind bars. They took I remember a young white kid came in, Charles, for auto theft, stole his mama's car and wrecked it. He went to jail. They had him in there with two of my homeboys who were there for carjacking and cold-blooded murder. And I know what took place with that young man and a few others like him. Prison is what you call hell on earth, prisoners call it home. Somebody gotta talk to these young men like that.
So I applaud the judge for making an effort to get through to young people, right? I experienced as a judge the apathy, the fact that they're not afraid of consequences, and taking time to have real conversations to try to pierce the veil and get through their skull. Now, typically kids that young, you can often look into the parents' eyes, because although this was an adult in district court, a young man, at 17, as you just mentioned, you went to jail, county jail at 17. 17 is the age of criminal majority in Texas. Now, so I applaud as the San Antonio area judge, Bexar County. I applaud it, but I am bothered by the casual indictment that's very accurate of our prison system. I don't think it's as accurate in jail. You do see, like Harris County in the Houston jail, you see some bullying and violence. You don't see as much sexual assault as you do.
That's not true.
You don't see nearly
That's
as much.
not true, Charles.
Okay, it is true.
No, it's not, Charles.
Okay. But at the end of the day,
they got some real booty bandits in the county jail.
Okay, I get it, but typically it's longer term facilities. You see more race division and violence in the penal system as opposed to the temporary holding systems at our county and misdemeanor jails, right? But at the end of the day, we have to do something as America, because if you get sentenced for stealing your mom's car and wrecking it, right? If you get sentenced for possession of cocaine, it should not be a death sentence to HIV. It shouldn't be a sentence to being victimized, right? Because really what we're doing with our prison system right now is we are sending people off to either become victims or to become monsters. And there's really no in between. And while, again, I applaud this judge taking time, it blew up on our Instagram, Fox Face-Off. Please give it a follow. But at the end of the day, we really need to start having serious conversations in America about creating safer prisons. And the reason we don't do it, whether in liberal states like California, where it's completely out of control and the gangs run the prisons, or in Texas, where there's more authoritarianism, but there's still a huge problem, we have to spend the money, right, to make prisons safe, because prisons should be about reform, not
Charles,
about destruction.
I'm all for spending money to better rehabilitate prisoners so when they come back to the free world,
Now, I'm talking about
they
keeping
have
them safer.
employment
I'm
skills.
talking about more guards,
they have job
more
training
lockdown.
skills. They receive chemical, drug dependency, and drug alcohol
Okay.
counseling. But I'm sorry, Charles, prison is exactly what it's supposed to be.
It's not
prison.
supposed to be about being raped.
And Charles, let me tell you something. I'll never forget a partner of mine, man named Demetrius. I'm going to leave it at that. He was in jail. He had just got a life sentence. We were 17. He had got a life sentence for jacking a boy at the bus stop for his Air Jordan sneakers. Killed him. And they brought a young boy and their little Indian kid. They nicknamed him Gandhi. He weighed about 50 pounds. And do you know when they brought his boy in there, man, it wasn't 30 minutes that three of the dudes was fighting, and Demetrius was one of them. They was fighting of who would have access to him first. And let me tell you something, man, that's real. Somebody got to start telling these young people that prison is nowhere you want to go. Stop committing these petty crimes, because petty criminals, when they get locked up, they put you with the killers, the rapists, the murderers. You're in the same damn cell block as they are. Somebody got to wake our young people up and tell them, quit playing these dumb games, because if you get locked up, they not segregating you with just the car thieves. No, they putting all y'all together.
Okay, and I would point that while that might be real, it's also wrong. And you're also ignoring, which shocks me when you do, you're ignoring the segment of our society that is wrongfully arrested and wrongfully put in jail, wrongfully put in a holding facility where this stuff is happening to them. Now, I would disagree with the notion that county lockups are as dangerous, right, with the exception of maybe Rikers in New York, but they are markedly dangerous and far more dangerous than they should be. And it should be about reform and rehabilitation. And it's
I
not.
agree with reform.
And when this judge
I
sits
agree
there
with rehabilitation. I agree with that.
and casually talks about the realities of sexual assault in our penal system, it seems like, well, hopefully it scared the kid straight. I doubt that it did, but I appreciate her effort. But honestly, Quanell, we have to start advocating for safer prisons.
Charles,
right?
let me
and
tell you something,
I
Charles.
want more people in prison
Charles,
that commit violent
Charles,
crimes instead of the revolving door.
When I was in
but
county,
I want them safe while they're
Charles,
in there.
When I was in county jail at 17, I had homeboys, partners of mine. We were in the same little clique on lockdown. I would hope and pray to God I'd never seen him on the street around my grandmother. I would hope and pray to God I'd never seen him around my mother's home. There were cats I was cool with that I knew in my mind. If I saw this man walking down my street, on my mama's street, I'd have to do something to him, because I know what he's capable of. I know what he'll do. There are tons of young men like that in these penal institutions, man. And young boys got to stop going to jail for shoplifting. We watch these kids shoplifting on TV all the time.
We're not even arresting those kids
And that's the
shoplifting
problem.
on
And guess
TV
what?
all the time.
Somebody got to tell them.
We need to arrest them, jail them, but they need to be safe
But somebody
in jail.
better tell them, you go rob that person if you want to. You go steal that expensive Louis Vuitton jacket if you want to. You going somewhere where you become baby oil.
But here's the thing. The liberal solution is to just ignore crime so there's no stats. The conservative solution is to ignore people in prison. We need a moderate solution that jails victim crime but has them in there safely.
I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. The bill will be unique.
Imagine being trans and voted for Trump, and the first thing he says when he's elected is that you're a boy.
In this round, Here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that are applauding Trump's immediate post-victory. Day one, he's proclaiming that it's boys are going to be boys and girls are going to be girls, and he's going to radically change policies for trans Americans. Obviously, that TikTok video, a woman is gleefully laughing about the fact that those that supported Donald Trump's ideologies are now that are trans are now listening to it. I think it's mostly directed at Caitlyn Jenner. I don't think there's a huge groundswell of support in the LGBTQIA community as a whole for Donald Trump, although there is some, right? But I think there are some important conversations that need to be had. One, he is saying he's going to outlaw transition, both the pharmaceuticals and the surgeries, the top and bottom surgeries for minor Americans. There has been a huge push on those seeking detransitioning, those that were transitioned as 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids who grow up, realize that was a phase, and they can't find anyone to help them. There's no coverage for the detransition. And there's also academic studies that have suggested that the justification for transitioning children was to lower the risk of suicide for conflicted youths that are having issues with their sexual identity. But recent studies that were suppressed, even by the academics that created the studies, show there's not a huge benefit to the transitioning to their mental health. So there's real important questions, especially the one of the medical industry, both surgeons and big pharma profiteering off transitioning children, which is frightening, right? It's frightening
and
if
you
they
left
do.
one big part out.
Go ahead.
Remember, there was a strong push by pharmaceutical companies pushing and financing those transitional doctors to push Medicaid to pay.
Right, paying
Medicaid to pay for the transitional surgery for children. And the price, you ready for this? And the price for a child's transitional surgery was 3 times more expensive than what an adult would be charged from Medicaid as a child. It was a financial windfall for a lot of these doctors.
Well, wasn't just Medicaid.
And the pharmaceutical companies.
If you have private insurance, Biden tweaked the rules, as did Obama, mandatory coverage on our insurance for transitioning. So we're paying for it.
Huge money grab.
Right. So there's a huge money grab, but we can't forget the people that legitimately
let's talk
have gender dysmorphia
that.
And genuinely live their lives
in those cases.
And why we can support people and also have reasonable rules.
This is where I agree and disagree with Donald Trump.
Okay.
I agree that the transitional surgery should not take place until a child is an adult.
Okay.
And a child is really mentally mature enough to make that final decision. That's a life-changing decision. But I also disagree that if a child is born with both sexes, and it does happen, and sometimes the parents chose to get rid of the wrong sex, then when the child grows up, they really are a different sex than when they got rid of. Well, in the case where science says we need to wait and make these decisions, let science make that decision with the parents, but let the child evolve so we can truly identify which gender is most dominant in cases like that where child born with both sexes.
Well, I mean, the pushback from the medical community is that if a boy or a girl, especially boys, go through puberty with all the testosterone, they're not going to be able to reverse it. But I do agree with you that it's not a decision that should be made lightly, that children are often mercurial and they'll feel one way. You know, we see these parents telling their children when they're 4 or 5 years old, right? And I think that is a new form of Munchausen's by proxy, where the parents are reveling in the attention they receive from having the different child. We had an entire middle school class where everyone was trans or non-binary, right? And it got some social media and some media attention, right? Clearly that is just children jumping on a bandwagon, right? But we can't forget those people. And clearly Donald Trump is going to run roughshod, but we have people, adults, that should be free to live their lives as they want without trampling others. And if you've had a full surgery, right, and you no longer, let's say
that's for adults,
somebody
though,
born,
Charles,
right,
not kids.
Right, but Trump is saying that it'll just be whatever you identify, what you identified as at birth. Let's say you live your life.
I don't think he should get away with adult decisions.
Right. You have an adult woman living as a woman that's born a man, had the penis cut off, and is living purely as a woman, why do we want to force them just to pander to the Christian right to live their lives differently, right? So while I have issues like we had in the Olympics, we had, it turns out it was an Afghani with a micro penis and undescended testicles, who they were aware, they actually, the medical documents got leaked. They were aware that it was someone born a man with a very small penis and testicles that they allowed to win a gold medal.
But a small penis should not qualify a man to identify with the opposite sex.
But political
because if that's the case, Charles, you know how many white guys in America will be identifying with the opposite sex because they have, quote unquote, were born with genetically small penises? I mean, this is not something we should. So I agree with Donald Trump that we should not affect adults making that decision. Let the children
but Donald
go and
Trump
evolve.
is saying he's going to impact adults making the decision.
And that's why I disagree with him. If you're an adult, do whatever you choose to do.
Well, as long
as you're an adult, and we don't have to pay for it.
But we have to stop being so political, like this Afghani Olympian, right? What was force-fed down everyone's throat is, no, this is a woman. They were born a woman. It turns out that was a lie. And they literally beat the living heck out of a bunch of female combatants all the way to a gold medal, and brutally beat them. And when people were objecting, they were bullied into silence. And I think we need less bullying on both sides.
But I agree with Donald Trump.
And more consideration on both sides.
But I do agree with Donald Trump that girls should not be playing and participating in the same sports as boys, competing against each other.
Well, yeah, but
especially in physical competitive
but
sports.
We're talking about it right now. We're talking about Donald Trump saying he's not going to allow adult people to live their lives.
But he also spoke about boys playing in girls' sports too.
And we can get there, but he's not going to allow adults to make decisions about their lives and how they want to live.
I disagree with that.
Surgery.
Let adults make adult decisions.
Right, and I absolutely disagree.
But the taxpayer should have to pay for it.
Well, I agree with that, but we've also got to check the exploitation by Big Pharma and the medical
I totally
industry.
agree. It's been a hustle. Well, Charles, we just watched a video clip of Colorado Buffaloes in the game against Texas Tech this past weekend, where Texas Tech lost to the Colorado Buffaloes in Lubbock, and many people believe that the Tech team, Texas Tech, would beat the Red Raiders, would beat the Buffaloes. Did not happen. In fact, they got blowed out. Well, during that game, you see Deion Sanders, the safety, coming back from the end zone with the ball in his hand. You see a ball boy from Texas Tech institution knock the ball out of Deion Sanders' hand. Then he was confronted by Shiloh's brother, Shador, and another one of Shiloh's brothers, who was the cameraman, who had a slight confrontation with the ball boy. The ball boy knows he was completely out of line. The ball boy knows he does not interact with opposing team players at all. In fact, they're told not to even interact with the team that they're on the sideline with players. He overstepped his bounds because he was frustrated and angry that Colorado had scored a touchdown, so he wanted to knock it out of his hand. And then he received the immediate consequence. Some people are angry and upset that the young man was treated like that, but by the same token, he involved himself in an aspect of the game that is forbidden for ball boys to do. And when you see the consequence for it, now people want to be angry. I don't think the N-word should have been used by Deion's son, but at the same time, he's speaking the language of that young generation where the N-word don't have the same racial issues like it did with us, so they see it differently.
You know what I'm angry about? I'm angry about Matt Horn, our producer, not making that Texas Tech Red Raider ball boy the face-off F-up of the week, right? Because here's the truth. That was Deion Sanders Jr., who was the cameraman, and he should have used that profane language. They're talking about he's going to get penalties. If you look at the Texas Tech Red Raiders fans, they all crying on social media. But there is no doubt. There is no doubt Shiloh had a ball, probably a game ball. Did that ball technically belong to Texas Tech? Of course it did. Do people routinely, when there's a special play or a special moment, have a game ball, carry the game ball with them, keep that ball? Of course they do. The fact that that little Red Raider punk put his hands on shot, popped that ball. He just walked up, you see him pop the ball out of his hands and grab it. He thought he was smooth as silk.
Right.
And you have all these people, if you look at the comments all over TikTok, all over Instagram, we grown-ass men talking about TikTok and Instagram, but you look at the comments, they're tearing apart Deion, saying he didn't raise his family right, tearing apart Deion Jr., when the truth is you got three brothers. Three brothers all participating at a very high level, very high. I think if the Buffaloes win this weekend, they're going to the playoffs, right?
Yeah, it'd be
you got
shocking.
these three brothers that immediately said, the two older brothers stuck up for Shiloh. And I applaud it. I think Deion has raised his kids right, and I think to hell with that Texas Tech,
but you know
a
what?
water boy, ball boy,
But
I think he
Charles,
was being a punk.
I would say to those who are criticizing, condemning Deion's sons for defending one another against a ball boy who was wrong and out of line.
It ain't like they put hands on him.
What about all of those affluent young men and women who were in the stands throwing tortillas at the Colorado football
I didn't
players?
get the tortillas thing. I think
the
it's a Texas Tech
whole
thing.
Game. They were throwing tortillas at the players from Colorado the whole game. In fact, the Texas Tech head coach had to take a microphone and ask the fans to stop throwing tortillas on the field.
Hold on now. Now, were they corn tortillas or were they flour tortillas? Because someone throws a flour tortilla with me, I just need a little butter, a little cheese, I'm golden. I appreciate the snack.
They wasn't throwing
But a
butter and
corn
cheese.
tortilla-
They wasn't throwing chicken fajitas. They was throwing tortillas.
I ain't eating
and
no corn
really,
tortilla.
let me ask you a question. Are those fans going to be punished who disrupted the game by throwing tortillas on
I
the
think
field?
that's more of a Texas Tech thing. I don't think anyone's going to get punished, but I applaud.
But if we're gonna
I'd
put out
applaud
bad behavior,
Deion's
let's do
children.
it across
I
the
don't
board.
think Deion's children, other than the language, I don't think we saw any bad behavior
I
from
agree.
Deion's children.
I
Stick it
agree.
up.
That's it for the Face Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.